Thank you, General Odierno, Secretary Mayhew. It's great to have you appearing before us today. And General Odierno, I do want to thank you for your visit to Massachusetts and to Natick Soldier Systems. It was so much appreciated. So thank you for that. But I'd like to take this opportunity to talk to you both about the decision in the case of General Jeffrey Sinclair. As the record shows, General Sinclair pled guilty to the following: maltreatment of a subordinate, soliciting illicit pictures from junior female officers, possessing pornography, as well as misuse of a credit card, and using derogatory language. He was sentenced to pay a fine of $24,100, but did not receive any jail time or a reduction in rank. I'd like to quote now from a New York Times article that discusses the culture of Sinclair's unit when he was a colonel. The quote is not pretty, and I take no satisfaction from reading it. Quote, "The atmosphere in his unit was such that at a farewell party when he left brigade command 4 years ago, soldiers in his unit put on a skit in which one, dressed in a wig and clothes in an apparent portrayal of the captain the general was sleeping with, acted out a scene in which, quote, she, unquote, asked another soldier, seated in a chair and portraying the then Colonel Sinclair, whether he wanted oral sex," unquote. From this story and from the charges that General Sinclair has admitted to, there can be no doubt that General Sinclair abused and debased his authority in a reprehensible way, using it to perpetuate a toxic military culture which accepted even criminal behavior as the norm. And yet, according to the Times, it was after this incident that he was promoted to brigadier general. And this is just what we know. I don't want to imagine what we don't know. These series of incidents and its recent shocking outcome, again, in which the general did not receive a reduction in rank and was not sentenced to any time in jail, raises the very serious question of whether the UCMJ can be fairly called an instrument of justice, and whether an organization where rank and the pecking order created by rank can ever rise above the dictates of deference that rank demands in order to meaningfully change. I grew up in a family of an Air Force colonel, and I recall in the mornings when my father wanted us to get up and do whatever, he always said orders from headquarters, and we responded and did whatever the task of the day was. But to put aside that, this decision and these incidents has undercut the progress that has been made by Congress, the military, and I appreciate the sincere and genuine efforts that the Army has made, and many dedicated advocates, often themselves victims of military sexual trauma, to create accountability and change a culture that too often perpetuates a predatory climate. It fuels a belief within the services and in the civilian world. I can't tell you how many of my constituents commented on the outcome in this case, that high-ranking officers receive and will receive special treatment, whereas enlisted members would be most harshly treated. I know that you both agree that general officers should be held to a higher standard, and there must be serious accountability when they fail to meet these standards. But is that currently possible? I have my doubts. I appreciate that and I appreciate the question of Congresswoman Davis about toxic leadership, and that you're trying to get a handle on it and create metrics. I hope that that includes a way in which you link toxic culture to the ways in which leaders fuel a culture within their units that promote sexual harassment and sexual assault, all the various forms of military sexual trauma that we've become altogether too familiar with. This is really a comment as much as anything. I appreciate the extraordinary challenges you have. I'm just not sure that you have the tools to really make change. The UCMJ is rooted in an organization that is deferred and defined by rank. It is implemented by those who are ingrained in that culture, and I have to say this decision was so troubling on so many fronts.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, the gentlelady. Dr. Fleming.
I was going to respond.
Mr. Chairman, I think she had a little bit more time left.
I understand a few moments ago you talked about a half-day session that the Secretary of Defense had with the ranking members or the rank. My question to you is, so as Secretary of the Army and top general in the Army, what are the two of you going to do about the Sinclair situation?
I'll start. As the final decision maker in matters of this kind, I'm really constrained to what I can say. Unlike in the civilian sector, when a jury comes in and the case is closed, this case is not closed. They're under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, a continuing process of certification of the record, providing both the victim as well as the general an opportunity to respond to the content of that record. The accused can make pleas for clemency, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a ways to go. What I can say is that, as in the civilian sector, we do not have control over, nor do we try to influence the sentencing of a judge. The Army was faced with the prospect of prosecuting this particular individual, and it did that. And it also prosecuted in a way that obtained a conviction. Those are the things we do control. And I think it's worthy to note that in the Army, the prosecution rate for rape is 64%, where in the private sector it's 14%, 14 to 20%. So we do take the steps necessary to hold soldiers accountable. But we cannot, and nor would the civilian sector, be able to make the determinations of a sentencing judge.
So the general gets off the hook?
As I said,
retires with full benefits?
As I said, sir, the process is still ongoing.
So
I have to make the final.
change.
I have to make the final certifications as to his rank and conditions of retirement, and that's not yet reached my desk.
General, your comments.
I have no additional comments than what the Secretary said. The bottom line is the military justice system, like the civilian justice system, has an independent judiciary. In this case, he had the sole discretion of the sentence and of the accused, and the military judge made a decision. We now will abide by that decision and work through the process as was described by the Secretary of the Army, and we can't comment any further on it because it's still an ongoing case.
When it's completed, I would expect you'll be back here to explain what your decisions are.
Any decision I make will be a matter of public record, of course.
I yield back.
Thank the gentleman.